up. So what were the ones this week that got your attention?
I think first and foremost, Indiana, Oregon. Obviously, it's a huge game. You know, a lot of my best bets aren't always going to be on the big games, but this one happened to be. I actually have Indiana projected to win this game by 2. I tweeted out that score projection yesterday, and that got quite a stir on X, as you can imagine. You know, I mean,
you're going to be in a Dan Lanning speech, Tyler.
Yeah. He's going to put that up in the locker room. That's okay. I mean, I think Oregon's a really good team. They're in my top 5, my power ratings, but Indiana has been really good. I mean, the metrics just love Indiana right now. So I'm very curious to see how this game goes.
Yeah. The thing that I think is interesting about this is that the brain and the math are different. Like, my brain works the same way as everybody's brain on X does. Oregon's awesome. They've got these great players. And I hate that I'm saying X now. On Twitter, it's always going to be Twitter. But that's not always the case. Like, what we think is just going to happen is Oregon names it scored. Indiana got blown out by Ohio State last year. They're still a tier below. What is it in the numbers and in the calculations that you've made that stands out the most? And what can you do to help people urge that what their brain thinks isn't always how football games play out?
Yeah, I mean, just looking through some of the different metrics, like, I mean, their opponent adjusted points per game is way better than Oregon's. You know, Oregon obviously took a hit in terms of all their opponent adjusted metrics last week when Penn State lost to UCLA, because that Penn State win, you know, and performance from Oregon was really strong for them at the time. And now that Penn State has just continued to, I mean, Penn State just hasn't looked good all season, really. So that is not as elevating as it once was. The red zone scoring on field, Indiana's been better there. That formula would favor Indiana by 7.5. So, I mean, and again, there are some mixed numbers here. I don't want it to sound like I think Indiana is just going to show up and roll Oregon. That's not the case. I do project them to win by 2, but, you know, there are multiple formulas here that I run that do have Oregon winning. But, you know, I look at the thing holistically, and I think Indiana should be able to cover the 7.5. And as you know, Ari, I hit this on Sunday at 9.5.
Yeah. The thing, I'm not good at math, as Andy can attest, but the thing that scares me about this formula, and I don't know anything about what you do other than you're smart, but is if you discredit Oregon's win over Penn State too much, because the Penn State that Oregon played was not the Penn State that lost to UCLA last week. I think we can agree on that. Yep. We know that I think teams change. And then also Indiana rolling Illinois at a pace that, you know, was so big. The margin was so big. Like, can 2 results, because I assume that because Illinois turned around and beat USC after that is also impacting the numbers. And I wonder how much individual results of games, when we know teams aren't the same teams, impact the math. That's the only thing that scares me.
Well, that's exactly why, you know, for all of the consternation from media or people on Twitter, whatever, they're like, well, why do we have preseason priors? Like, let's just only focus on what we've seen on the field. Well, the problem is, if you don't use any preseason priors, then you start the season with the assumption that everyone's starting from the same place, which is not true. We know that, you know, Ohio State and Georgia and those teams are starting ahead of the pack generally. So that's where, you know, especially at this point in the season, you still have to have some preseason prior baked in to help smooth out some of those huge results, like you mentioned, like Indiana killing Illinois and Penn State losing, you know, as 24-point favorites to UCLA. So obviously those have to matter, but, you know, one game's not going to completely swing the whole thing.
But how far were Indiana and Oregon separated in the preseason priors?
I would have to look. I would imagine probably a touchdown or less. I don't think it was a huge gap. I could be wrong. Right. I'd have to look. But for instance, you know, in my numbers, if I only use the on-field data, I would favor Indiana by 6.5. But because it's a blended formula with some preseason prior still baked in, it's only Indiana -2.